Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Stone Protocol podcast. I have a very special guest, Aura Vibin. We've had this like amazing magical coalescence of cancellation, and then Aura is able to swoop in and claim this spot. And so I was actually up pretty late last night, really just binge watching her YouTube videos, her Spotify playlist, her TikTok, her Instagram. And here in Colorado, DMT is legal. So I was also microdosing DMT to be as open as I can, to really just take in her vibe. And so, yeah, Aura, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, what an
There's so many
intro.
things I want to touch
Thank
on, but
you.
yeah, come on in. Yeah, join
Yeah,
us.
thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so excited to be doing this. I think we're really on the same frequency. So I'm excited for this conversation to see kind of where it goes.
Yeah, and one of the things that you told me that I really respected, was wanting to go deep. So I think a lot of people, when they talk in their podcasts, they're a little, I don't know, nervous about like, hey, do I go like full in spirituality? Do I talk all about some of the crazy, demonic possession, awakening experiences that I had? And I really respect and appreciate, you are so open about your experience channel. And so we're going to put all of your links below. People, I really suggest that you check yourself out. One of your videos that I felt was actually really very impactful for me, was when we were telling your story about your awakening. You talked about, your father wasn't your life early years, and then the death of your mother, which was, I think, very pivotal. Going through depression and some drug use, and I have many of these things in my life too. My parents are still alive, but they are emotionally dead to me. Unfortunately, I went to boarding school. We can get into it later.
Hmm.
But you did such a great job of so openly and so honestly talking about your experience, not only I think to be seen and to share, but I think also to normalize for other people who go through some of these things so they don't feel outcast or strange or broken or wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've always considered myself a seeker. And so, because of that, I kind of read what's unsaid, which makes me a perfect sponge for like messages through music and messages through art. And because I can receive those messages when they're kind of coded and occultish, I feel like I'm also like I have 6 placements in Capricorn. So I can bring that, Capricorn is half earth, half water, the sea goat, mermaid. So I'm able to take those occult pieces or messages and bring them into this tangible grounded reality. Like, here's what happened step by step. Here's what Billie Eilish's song actually means. Here's what the symbolism in this mainstream message actually means. And obviously, because of that like direct transmission, it's very jarring and shocking for people, but
Well, and their
sometimes
dogs
people need
apparently.
that. Say it again.
And sometimes their dogs in CrossFit studios. That was so funny. Your
Yeah.
story where like some woman was like, you're frightening my dog."
You're
Like,
frightening my dog. And it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So you have to be just discerning of who to share this information with. But I actually had posted that 5-part series on TikTok. And I think it was liked by like 12 people. And I just felt not received on that platform. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it down from there. I'm going to repurpose it on my podcast and just put it all together for a 1 hour transmission. And I feel a lot safer to be received in my entirety that way. I also don't feel the need to have comments on my podcast, right? So it's kind of just like a passive, oh, listen to my spiritual awakening story if you so choose. But I give people disclaimers like, hey, this sounds like a Harry Potter novel. Like, if you're mentally unwell, don't keep listening to the next part, right? Because it's intense.
yeah, I think
So,
you
yeah.
did a really good job, and I really appreciated the cadence of it too, and then
Thank
also
you.
giving like trigger warnings to people, particularly talking about. I won't spoil anything because I want people to go check it out. But the instance where you had someone coming into your apartment, to record, with you, and that how that kind of went. Again, I want people to go check it out. Maybe we can talk about there's like so many different tracks I want to go, and so hopefully we'll be able to just have you come on the podcast, just be like
Yeah.
part one of part two.
Yeah.
um how do you manage, so two lanes, you can take it however you like. How do you manage either sharing from that deep place and then people and their dogs not receiving it well? This happens to me often. Sometimes dogs also don't like it when I am sharing about some of my experiences. Projection is a thing, even for our canine furry friends. And then also, what do you do when there are other people that are either, I would say, possessed by a demon or daemon or some negative non-corporeal or semi-corporeal form, that then either steps in and then uses that person as kind of a proxy, or that they just have like some sort of weird like demon pact with that entity
Mm-hmm.
to gain energy. So
Yeah.
One is like for, not to say this derogatory, one is for muggles, the other is for active, like, predators or those who are part of predation.
I love that you're just diving right into kind of what I've processed, because I've been going through a really intense initiation of healing from narcissistic abuse. And I felt like I was in a portal of like non-existence for 3 years, where I was just being like siphoned off of and fed over. And that all led to this huge realization of me in the mirror with myself towards the end of everything, being discarded with a child and just being like, don't ever.
Is that from the ending of the relate? And again,
Yeah.
we talk about relationships a
Yeah.
lot on this podcast, so I don't want to press at all, but if you want
No,
to share,
definitely.
please
I'm
do.
open. I'm an open book. So
All right.
I, yeah, that whole relationship basically ended with me looking into the mirror with myself, being like, don't ever self abandon ever again. And I think that that's really the final boss initiation, to never self abandon with anyone. Because once you have tried to make it work with someone you love and you have given everything, you've given like every part of yourself, I'll contort like this, I'll dye my hair for you like this, I'll do this for you, I'll do anything for you. It's like, oh my God, girl, like, why are you even in a situation where you have to externalize all of your power into this
Right,
person?
childhood trauma. The answer is
My
childhood
goodness,
trauma.
the child. Yeah, it is. It is. It's truly that.
Yeah. I mean, I speak
And
from
so,
experience. That's why I'm saying it. Yeah.
yeah. And so once you realize that, like, it truly does come back to yourself, your either lack of personal power, your self-abandonment issues, you realize that, like, if the person closest to you that you wanted to love you will not love you, you need to love yourself. And from there, I mean, you can conquer the whole world, because what else is left? Like, I'm not even interested in embarking in any sort of relationship. I just want to get close to myself so that I can love myself. And from there, meet people who also respect me for who I am. And yeah, so.
And then you polarize and you magnetize those types of people to you, instead of it being, in my experience at least, instead of it being a grasping, pulling, where you're kind of in Buddhism they call it dunka or suffering. Instead of craving, you just literally magnetize to you, and it's passive but also very active. So was part of that transformation, I know recently, and I don't know how recently, but you changed your hairstyle. And then I remember listening to one of your podcasts about the name change. I also legally changed my name. This was several years ago, but it's very pivotal for me. How did that kind of play into this experience for you?
Well, I actually changed my name, my artist name. I didn't change it legally, but I just embodied a new name when I was writing a lot of music. And I was like, oh, my legal name, which is Fiona, doesn't fit who I want to become in the world. And I also don't feel like I can take her and blow her up in the world and be someone that I am happy with the world knowing me. Like, the only famous Fiona is like Fiona Apple. And I just didn't like the way that was received by the world. And I was like, no, there's a different name for me. And actually, I had a Twitter for like 10 years and I had always gone by Fiona Aura. And I have always been like this quantum soul where like things happen in different times for me, like future, past, present are all kind of merged. And this is why this relationship that I was in is not a total loss, because one of the reasons why I went into it was because my younger self saw him when I was 7 years old as a vision of like who I'm going to be with. I'm going to have a child with that person. I thought I was going to have children with that person. I had a miscarriage with that person. So technically, spirit baby. But that's one of the reasons why I don't hold so much guilt and shame for that decision, because my younger self saw that choice. And so I acted from my younger self's compass. And so I forget the question.
Oh, we're just talking about name changes. There's
Yeah,
so
so
many
the
places we
name
can go.
change, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I had always been Fiona Aura on Twitter. And I was like, well, I love Aura. What would that look like for me? And so Aura, that's when I actually when I embodied that name, I ended up going through a spiritual awakening and started seeing auras on people and just came into my spiritual gifts. Aura Vibin. And then, yeah, everything became light, and Aura truly just means light. And what's crazy is that Fiona actually also means light. So it's just so much light, so much light.
And light means light.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
that's cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, as soon as I embodied that, I had a huge spiritual awakening. I truly believe that the name that you choose for yourself changes the trajectory of your destiny. That's what I did.
People ask me a lot. They go, why did you choose that name? And I tell them, if I could choose, well, I can choose to be anything. I choose to be light. And it is through understanding darkness, through understanding relationships, through understanding complicated relations with one's parents and the world, that then we are able to actually choose to be light and to embody light and to literally embody light inside of our bodies. A couple different tracks that I want to go. We've talked a bit, obviously, messaging back and forth. Apparently my chart is very similar to this other guy's chart, and so I
Yeah.
kind of want you to like rail on me that way, like see the shadow. That sounds fun.
Let me pull
That
up your chart right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And when you're doing that, it's really interesting for me to see on your social media. So, and again, please correct me if I'm misstating anything. So the tag there is fame astrologer, and one of the things that I've seen that you are really focusing on is how people, I think particularly women, although I'm actually, as I'm going through, I'm like, wow, I'm learning really great things about me being in the spotlight too, where you talk about how
Hmm.
people can magnify and really send themselves out in healthy ways, and then giving a lot of primarily female examples of other women who are doing this very well, and then using the astrological kind of lens and compass to basically ground that in, I would say, corporeal and non-corporeal reality. And so I just kind of want to give a preface for people that seems, at least from my perspective, your facet and niche on not the totality, right, but on how you approach astrology, which I think is really very cool, and it's done very tastefully, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah, my whole world changed when I started learning about business and I started realizing that there are four main niches: health, wealth, relationships, and impact. And you become a market of one when you kind of funnel in to one of those lanes. And so I realized if I was in the impact niche, which is all about visibility and branding and content creation and helping, people create their online brand, how can I become a market of one? And I was like, well, already what differentiates me is I'm an astrologer, but now I'm a brand astrologer and I can focus on visibility. And so, how I do that with the chart is I focus on your midheaven, which is obviously how the public perceives you and receives you naturally, and the ruler of your midheaven, along with your ascendant, which is your rising sign. It's how you move in the world naturally. And then the chart ruler, which is your ruler of your rising sign. So, if we look at your chart, for example, you're a Scorpio rising. You also have a midheaven in Leo. And so we would look at the midheaven and we would be like, okay, well, he's ruled by the sun. So his public image is ruled by the sun. Light, great name. But
Can
then
can
we
I
look,
can I
yeah,
show you something? So
yeah.
I just yesterday, I'm in a belly dance troupe, and we just did our costume for our belly dance thing, and I am going to be Ra, the sun god. I don't know if
Wow.
yeah, so
That's
I don't
so
know if you can
funny.
see it on the
Yeah,
lens, but
yeah.
I'm going to be posting this on my social media. So I'm literally going to be embodying Ra for this huge stage performance. So very, very sun focused. Sorry to
Very
interrupt.
astrologically aligned.
Right.
Hmm.
I'm doing my best. I'm trying.
And what's cool too is that you look at your ruler and you have a sun in Pisces in the fourth house conjunct your Mercury. And so that's kind of the energy at play. Sun in Pisces is also very spiritual. So there's this natural spiritual light that you bring to, the world. And so a great way to market this visibility, because it's in the fourth house, is tapping into this ancestral knowledge, tapping into your emotions and being able to be this like emotional alchemist, sitting with people in that grounded, stable foundation, which is what you're doing with the podcast, which is great. Also, fourth house has to do with nervous system healing and lots of lineage patterns. So, breaking down karma for people, seeing people's patterns, clocking their patterns, looking at like inner child healing as well, because fourth and fifth house has to do with that. So that's kind of what I focus on and specialize in. And when I did see your chart, I was like, oh my God, you're born in the same year and then like very, very close to like when my ex partner was born. And what's interesting is you guys have very similar placements. And so karmically for myself, whenever this kind of stuff happens, I'm like, what is the lesson here with this
What is the
similar
lesson? I'm
person?
curious. Yeah,
What
what
is
is
the
the
lesson
lesson?
here with this similar person coming into my reality? Maybe to show me a different angle of this energy so that I'm not traumatized by the energy.
Not all sun deities or emanations of the sun god are bad, maybe. I
It's
don't
not
know.
even that. It's more the squares. I think the squares traumatized me. And what I mean by that is like,
I was gonna say, so
we, yeah, and I'll tell
talk to the high
people.
level. Don't, again,
Yeah,
please
no,
don't
I'm
dumb
not going to
yourself
speak
down.
in layman's term. I'll
And
speak for the people who understand
and
astrology.
then explain it for the rest of us who are not subject matter
Yeah.
experts like yourself. Thank you.
Definitely, definitely. So, when I was looking at like the synastry with my ex, we had a lot of squares. Okay. So I have like, again, 6 placements in Capricorn. He had major placements in Aries. And so I was like, okay, I see your chart and I see all these Aries placements. And obviously the first thing is like, oh my God, red flag. We're going to have so much like square issues. And squares are basically awakenings. Okay. They cause a lot of tension. And this tension can be good or bad depending on how much self responsibility and self accountability a person has within their own energy. So it's okay to, even be with someone if you have a synastry where you're squaring a lot of each other's planets, if you're on a mutual journey of, self development and you guys want to test each other and you want to give each other like different angles and stuff. Because when it comes to, I've been in relationships before where I've had a lot of conjunctions with people, and that has felt, conjunction is basically where you have the same planets. Conjunctions have felt like being in heaven with someone. But what I noticed was the downside or the blind spots of that is you can't see what you can't see because you're both operating on the same frequency. So you don't know what your blind spots are as a couple. You can't really awaken together because you're kind of the same person
Can I
in
ask
a
you a
way.
question?
Yeah.
So from your professional and personal experience and perspective, how much of that is the divine masculine, divine feminine needing to be different to both witness and behold and hold one another and support one another? So males are obviously, much larger, and I'm a very masculine male. You're very feminine female, and like both part, like I believe that we need that difference in relationship, to actually celebrate our individuality and then that union. And so
Hmm.
what is that appropriate balance that you find in your charts? Because I think a lot of people, at least people in my circles, they're like, show me your chart, and in a good way, because they want to try to understand, that compatibility.
Yeah.
Where do you see that balance point of having the, all right, we already have a fertile heaven here, and that's the conjunction, but now we can build a new version of heaven together, and that's the squaring. Where's that balance point come?
Yeah, at this point, I would say this is more of a character issue or a character conversation where, let's say you and I have a lot of squares, right? You have all these Aries placements, I have all these Capricorn placements. So, what can happen with squares is just this constant friction and misunderstanding. And that's just naturally what's going to happen in our charts together. So, whether that be we sit down, even as friends, right? We sit down, we create this blueprint to build a miniature wooden house together. Okay. Just, I'm thinking of like IKEA. We're about to like sit down and build
I'm
furniture
quite
together.
handy
Okay.
with screwdriver, so
Okay.
yeah.
So let's just say that that was the goal. Well, that whole process, because of all these squares, is going to create tension and friction and misunderstandings. And hey, no, I didn't mean to put that piece of wood there. Can you please put it this way? And it's like, no, but you said this. So this tension of misunderstanding is very likely to happen with like energies that are squared. But then it comes down to a character question and conversation where it's like, are you willing to learn the blind spot that you were missing, or do you just perceive your own reality as right? Because that's what becomes really difficult. If you can't see another person's reality or how they perceived you, then a lot of gaslighting can happen in these dynamics. And so you just have to have like a lot of awareness to even embark in relationship synastry where there's a lot of squares, because there's naturally going to be energy of misunderstanding. So you have to know that and then mitigate that and then have this like over understanding for the other person. It's a lot of energy.
So I do a lot of trauma healing in my coaching practice, and I watched your video also on trauma healing. When you are working with a client, and what you described makes total sense to me, and that tension, that energy builds. How do you suggest for a client, and based off your own experience, you've done a really, in my opinion, a really good job of saying your own personal experience is the gift that you then share with others once you've healed that. I feel deep resonance with this. Um, where what do you then do, and what do you share with clients when that energy builds in them, and like they're like, fuck this guy in a screwdriver, he's doing it wrong and he's not listening to me? What can then the divine feminine or the feminine do in that moment to then like aikido the situation back into communion?
I think that it's not all about one person can't change another person, right? So you have to also see where the other person is at and if they're willing to keep working with you. And I think that's kind of where I lost myself in my past relationship is I kept wanting to do the work. I kept wanting to go deeper, to go to the next level, but I quite literally saw where there was a cap in wanting to grow in the other person. And it was unfortunate because I have only ever gotten into relationships and wanted to see the end with someone, right?
Yeah.
Until I see where they're capped in growth. And I know that sounds so egotistical or like, oh my God, I'm the one who grows. No, but I'm also willing to have the conversations about my own blind spots. And I want to do this work together, right? Partnership is one of the greatest mirrors of awakening you can possibly embark into. But if you keep trying to work for them, and trying to create lists and having 3 hour long conversations on
For
why
them. Right,
empathy
right.
is
Yeah, for
okay
them.
for them,
Right.
then it's just like you're siphoning your life force at that point. So I think it's less about being like, how can I make this union work? And more like, hey, like they don't want to go the distance with you. You have to realize that as much as you want it, it's not gonna work if they don't want it. So I don't know what to say.
I think a big piece of that is to not fall in love with someone's potential, but you have to be in love with their actuality in the moment, and that's been a real challenge for me. And so it's then harmonizing with someone enough, and it shouldn't, even that word makes me feel a little ill. It should be joyous, and then co-creating and building together. I have I don't know if you encountered in some of my past stuff, but the difference between an event and a vector. A vector is basically a direction, and you're moving with a person, to go together. To It doesn't have to even be some end goal. I mean, it's an infinitely expanding, universe when we're in, 3D time space. So, from outside the universe, everything's happening at once, but from inside the perspective, it just continues to go. And so hopefully that relationship moves together on a vectored path. And so both parties need to match their velocity of whatever their growth is. And so
Hmm.
I think that resonates very, very deeply. And then it comes down to, okay, well, what happens if the velocity is different, or the vectoring is different, or one person's actually like, being very aggressive? And then how do you emancipate yourself? I've been married and divorced twice, and that's been a whole thing for me. How did you know for yourself? And maybe you mentioned previously that your partner left, and sometimes that is kind of how it goes. That's been some of my
Hmm.
experience. I've definitely held on for too long in relationships.
Hmm.
How do you suggest for potential clients and listeners? Okay, maybe the velocity is not moving in the right direction. Maybe our trajectory is not going in the right direction. Maybe our velocity is not appropriate, or maybe the actual direction is different. How can those people kind of come back to loving themselves enough to then be independent again? What do you suggest based off your experience for that for clients?
Yeah, I would definitely say that if they are longing for union, but they're seeing that the two people are not kind of going the same way or not going the same velocity or speed, that you kind of just have to ask yourself, like, if I were with this person for the rest of my life at the state that they're in, would I be happy? And can I accept them for where they're at right now, even though I know I am literally not the same person I was 5 minutes ago? The evolution and my velocity is like so quick. Could I remain with this person, or will the gap naturally become too wide where I can't even relate to them anymore?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like you said, you have to find someone or not, whatever. If you're looking for
I
union, you have
I
to
love
find someone
I
who's on
love
the
your
same.
answer. Can we go like super
Yeah,
metaphysical?
let's
Okay,
go. Let's go.
so what about then soulmates? I personally believe, and like people fucking like throw rocks at me about this. I believe that we are divine masculine, divine feminine here on planet Earth, trying to fucking end the predation here. But like Earth is this tiny little thing in this huge, huge galaxy, let alone universe. And like the
Yeah.
game here, although very relevant to people who live on this planet, and just look at the Epstein files, like absolutely disgusting to me,
Mhm.
horrible. Ugh. So it's bad, right? But it is
Mhm.
relatively small, I think, in the grand scheme of the universe. Very relevant. I'm not trying to underplay anything. My point is that there's a lot of things happening. And so, like,
Mhm.
for those of us, maybe with some Arcturian lineage or Pleiadian lineage, as we discussed a little bit, we can dive
Mhm.
into, that either in this podcast or another one. Where do you then feel reincarnation, soul contracts, and then hopefully, like, at least I know for me, and I'm just sharing, like, I wouldn't come to this place by myself. Like, I would bring my person with me and, like, would, again, like, I don't know, that just makes a lot of sense. But I've also been through a shit ton of weird shit. And so, like, it's been a rocky road. How does your cosmology fit with that? And how do you then make sense with that when emancipating yourself from a relationship, even if it's just emotionally emancipating yourself, and then planning, moving forward while in dating? Again, we talk about this a lot on the podcast because there's a lot of people who are, interested in
Yeah.
these things.
So this is I love this conversation because I love going like so deep with the cosmology of things. Obviously, I believe in reincarnation. I think that if I were to have a framework, if I were to leave this earth and be like, this is the truth, this is thy way, I would be like, study the laws of the universe. And like, you can't go wrong. Law of attraction, law of assumption, all the good laws of the Kabbalion.
Yep.
You can't go
100%.
wrong there. And so with that, I would say reincarnation is real. The the control that you have to come back as a soul with autonomy and sovereignty is that idea where your soul is weighed next to a feather, and if it is as light as a feather,
Was
then
it
you get to have more
not
choice.
Tiamat? That's a dragon. I forget. But yeah, Egyptian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Egyptian context. If your soul is weighed next to a feather and it is as light as a feather, then you have choice. You have choice to go disintegrate into the ethers and just be whatever you want to be, a soul floating about, or you can choose to come back as a sovereign being and incarnate maybe into a family of your choice for the different, soul lessons, whether that be you incarnate into a family of poverty for that extreme contrast, or you incarnate into a family of abuse for that extreme contrast, right? Whatever you decide, you have that free will to do so. And knowing the soul lessons that you will learn, just so for the purpose of becoming this like full sovereign being. And then if your soul is weighed next to a feather, but it's dense, what that means is that you're actually tied to the material realm in very, I would actually look at the seven deadly sins as a great representation of that density. Like, okay, full of lust, full of greed, full of selfishness, or I don't know what else,
Mhm.
gluttony, like addicted to food. It's really these
Yeah.
addictions to the material realm that keep your soul dense. And so if that at the time of death is too dense, then you have less choice, and then you're just thrown into dynamics
Well, it's like a
dynamics
large. It's the density will pull you.
The density will
Yeah,
pull you
yeah,
because that's the vibrational match.
yeah.
So you can't kind of float above anymore and be the observer because you have this perpetual addiction. And so that's where like souls who get trapped in karma, they come back and they kind of try to learn the same lessons and same lessons. So that's kind of how I view reincarnation. And again, I do feel like I was born an ancient soul. Like I came in with really intense future casted memories of like who I would be with. Again, that was the person I was with, and that we would have a family together. But I did not have any visions after that man. So like right now, it's crazy because the visions of my partnership, which I have carried with my being since I was 7 years old, I don't have any more visions of partnership. So it's like I don't even know if partnership is in the cards for me. It's not
How
even
does that
like a
feel? Just out
desire
of
anymore.
curiosity, like how does that feel in your body when you think of that? How does that feel?
It's definitely, I would say, a mixture of like emptiness, but also excitement, like this grief and relief. Okay. Grief that, like, whoa, the future I had held in my entire being since I was 7 years old is like gone. Like there's this huge heart ache, a soul ache. And I think that my spirit is like, this was not the lifetime for them to evolve with you, because I see where the cap was and I see the density, like the really like being attached to lust and like not being able to escape that cycle. And I'm like, whoa. And so I do believe that that was my person, in this lifetime because I came in at such a young age. But what's really interesting is that I had always trusted my inner child to go through that experience with that person, but I never knew the context as a child. I just knew that was the person. But was that the person to create a huge spiritual awakening in narcissistic abuse so that now I help other women? Like, I didn't have the context. And so my inner child really just thought that was my person forever. And yeah, so I'm holding like this duality of like, wow, so that wasn't, well, maybe that was your person for a certain reason, but now I don't have any more visions of like partnership. And I had always carried him as like my ideal partner since I was
Another way
young.
to look at it too, if you're playing the super long game, which would include multiple incarnations, that can then potentially, hypothetically, be your person to set you up on this particular life trajectory.
Hmm.
And then that would then just be an avatar or a facet of who he is. And that
Yeah.
that may not be the total, would need be not the totality of who he is. And that who better would you want to have be that negative force in your life than someone from that soul level, be the person that truly loves you, but then loves
Yeah.
you so much to play the villain in your story. So you then have something to push against, have a cocoon to then emerge from, to then help all these other women.
Well, what's funny is that I saw a video recently where there was this girl saying, when you have gone through abuse as an adult or whatever, sometimes it's not because you attracted that from like a weakened state, although I do believe there are a lot of things that I was not, I was very codependent and all that stuff. But sometimes it's to develop your shadow side. And I resonated with that so deeply because I'm like, oh my God, yes. Like, I was such a people pleaser. I was always expecting the best in people. I can see someone, one of my literal gifts is looking at someone and seeing their godlike self and seeing everything that they can be. Because that's just my natural baseline state. I see you for like the highest version you possibly are. But that's also you seeing potential and not seeing reality, and that can get you trapped in an illusion. So like literally most of my life is being lived in an illusion with that perspective. And so when that girl said that, like, sometimes you attract abusive situations to develop your shadow, I was like, yes. Because now also, if I'm on this visibility journey and I want to be seen by the public and like millions of people hate me, I literally have the person closest to me that I put on a pedestal rip my heart out. Like, there's nothing you can do to me
Oh, I
after
know, I
that.
know it.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know it so well. I know it so
that's what I'm
well. Yeah,
saying. So
I
it's
know it
like
so
once
well.
that person closest to you kind of like initiates you in that way, it's like nobody else, like, okay, tabloids, okay, millions of people online asking you, okay, I don't even know you. You don't even know me. But for the person closest to you knowing you and like, yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah, yeah. My second ex-wife, we were stage performers together, and we traveled the world together. And it was my second cancel culture experience was from her, and she was deeply wounded, and she was sexually abused by her father. And the information is public, so I'm not sharing anything that's not public. But to have that person then rip my heart out was so painful. And just to share, so this is actually the wedding ring from that marriage. And I took out, there was a black stone here. It was black jade. And so I removed the black jade and I put in quartz crystal to represent that I need to love myself truly, and that I can't give that heart out to anyone else before I truly love myself. And then took that time to then heal, and
Hmm.
now am in a healed space. And so that symbol of having the person closest to you rip your heart out, once that occurs and you don't either implode to suicide or just hide under a rock for the rest of your days, you then know that you can do anything. And that's a superpower in and of itself. And so for that, I'm eternally grateful. I'm kind of feeling some sort of mirroring from your experience in that as well.
Yeah, I kept saying to myself, I don't know how I would have navigated this if it weren't for all the identity work that I went through the previous 2.5 years. Like, I literally embarked on a self-concept journey, an emotional regulation journey. And so when this happened, it was like, yeah, I'm naturally an evolved self. This is happening for a reason. And all of my perspectives were kind of in alignment with who I'm becoming versus being shattered by my past self. So
So when you think about what you're trying to share with the world now, and you have a pretty substantial following on TikTok, which I'm very impressed with, what is the core kind of thing or ethos or emotion or qualitative state that you are trying to invoke and or inspire in your audience?
being visible at all costs. One of my core philosophies is visibility is the highest form of spirituality. And the reason for that is because when you are visible to the entire world, you receive all the projections that humanity has to offer. It's one of the fastest ways that your soul can evolve, because you quite literally have to craft out who you are and stand tall in a world trying to project onto you what they want from you, what they hate about you,
tear you down, eat you.
everything. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, the more visible you are, the stronger your identity has to be, the stronger your soul has to be to navigate everything coming at you. And again, it's like, if you're hidden and you're having a conversation with one person at home versus you put out a video and you get 400 replies, what do you think is going to evolve you faster? You're going to see 400 different people giving you their perspectives. And you're like, whoa, they thought of this, they thought of that. And it's like, wow, I would have never had this data or cared about it if I wasn't the one creating the video. Yes, you can do that, like spiritual behind the scenes, and like consume 400 comments about how other people are being received. Because I do that all the time, especially during cancel culture, or when someone huge is being canceled for something. I love looking at the perspectives to see where humanity is at in their reception of that. But I feel like because I study humanity like that and seeing where we're at, that also helps me evolve. What are people perceiving, the most visible people on the planet? What are they doing with that visibility? What shadow is that evoking in humanity? So again, core philosophy, the more visible you are, the more healed you have to become to stand in the spotlight. It's why I have a spotlight membership. It's why I have spotlight one-on-one. It's why when I do astrology readings, it's all tailored to how you can claim more light, more space, more energetic energy in your aura, just more light. Yeah.
So, and maybe this ties into your spotlight and your one-on-one sessions. How do you manage? And I have had to develop this over years. How do you manage negative projections and negative interactions? And I hope for you that you never go through cancel culture. It's super shitty. You learn a lot.
I've done it. I've gone through it. Yeah, it's shitty.
Super shitty. So what do you do? And then how do you then help clients and people who are interested in your content basically have a strong barrier and boundary and sense of self, while having, I like to think of it as like a semi-permeable membrane where you're still receptive to outside information without letting it taint you, and not succumbing to it, particularly the negativity, but even also sometimes the praise. And it doesn't have to be false praise, but when I was a stage performer, it was very easy for me before I was more healed to be like, oh, I'm so great, everyone loves me, I have like all these cheering people, blah 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 blah. And that then allowed me to not feel some of the negative feelings that I had inside, and instead focus on all of the positive that I was receiving. So that's one end. And then the other end is people telling you, oh, you should go kill yourself, blah, 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 like all of this stuff, to then not let that seep in. How do you both personally manage that? And then how do you share that with your clients?
Yeah, I think that, again, visibility is truly a spiritual journey. And the more healed you become, kind of you turn fear into funny. And I love that scene in Harry Potter where it's like, he goes up against the Dementor in the closet. And the whole lesson of like that classroom was, bibbity boppity boop, turn the Dementor into like a clown so that you can turn that fear into funny. Naturally, that's what happens when you realize why the Dementor exists to begin with, or like why that person is projecting onto you. So this just happened with a recent thread post that I made, where I said, oh yeah, sometimes, when you do tarot readings, it opens up a portal to demonic entities, and you have to be careful.
Yeah,
if
totally
you're calling in
straight up
any spirit, right? Because I was like, any spirit that wants to come through, da, da, da. And this girl, like, she literally all caps replied back to me being like, no, this is not true, da, da, da. And I was like, oh my
God. Just out of curiosity, what was your reasoning for that?
Well, that's the thing. She just said this is not true. And
okay,
so for me, it's like,
okay.
I can choose to embark and engage into the projection if I feel that it's going to serve my soul. But at a certain point with that specific projection, you just reveal yourself to me as to where you're at. Because I responded back to her once, and I did say, I was like, I'm curious to know why you're so certain in your own belief and not open to like another human being's experience. That triggered her so much. She responded to me all caps back being like, I'm so certain as she was like, I want to know why you're claiming a singular experience as a universal one and creating fear into the collective about tarot readings. And
it's
I was like,
don't play in traffic, kids. Like literally don't run into a highway.
No, and it's not even that. I was like, first of all, I have to break down. Now it's like so much energetic work for me to just show you where you're at. in your projections. And that's the thing is like, I was like, okay, she did not read my full statement because I said when I was a baby witch, which is literally claiming accountability for my own experience. And then I was like, I called in any spirit. So this was my experience. And I claimed my own story. I did not perpetuate fear as a universal thing. And so she just showed me where she was at in her inability to understand me. And that then goes into your own self sovereignty where you're like, hey, you don't have to over explain. You don't owe people an explanation. If they're choosing to misunderstand you, if they're choosing to not believe this is a possibility, that has nothing to do with you. And at that point, it just becomes energetic exhaustion.
Yeah. 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 It is exhausting. Even this morning, I had someone comment on, I did a post on like breathing into your heart and someone got mad about it. And I was like, bro, and I just banned them. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm just not going to deal with this. Like, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I didn't
And
get enough sleep
yeah.
last night to be like, to like try and, I don't know, whatever, manage you.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
don't need the hate right now. Yeah. So we unfortunately, we have 22 seconds left. Please come back to the show. It appears
Yeah, I
as
would
though
love to.
I have not pissed you off and or scared you away. So, okay, lovely. So we will have you back on the show. This is gonna beep us. I'm gonna turn it off. Where can people find you? There's gonna be in the show notes and all those things
Yeah.
too, but please tell us a little bit about some of the services that you do, where people can find you on the internet, and anything else that you want to share before we close out the
Yeah.
episode.
Just Aura Vibin. I'm primarily on TikTok, Threads, Instagram, YouTube podcast, Goddess State. Apart from that, yeah, you can just check out my services on Stan Store / Aura Vibin. I offer astrology readings, spotlight session, diamond mentorship, where I work with you one on one for the month on how to step into the spotlight using your birth chart as a compass. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you. Mm, thank you. Thank you so much.